In a two-story house in a residential neighborhood of Seattle, Rachel Smith watched her husband Michael leave for work while holding her morning coffee. 3 years into their marriage, these quiet morning moments together were the most peaceful part of her day. "I'll be late tonight. The deadline for the new project is coming up," Michael said, adjusting his tie at the front door. He was an engineer with a meticulous and gentle personality, but his strong sense of responsibility toward work had led to frequent overtime lately. "Don't push yourself too hard." "Take care," Rachel replied with a smile. She worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, adjusting her schedule to match her husband's regular routine. After Michael left, Rachel sat on the living room sofa to review her work plans for the day. However, she couldn't concentrate. Lately, what occupied her mind was the baby they hadn't been able to conceive. Initially, they had left it to nature, but as time passed, her anxiety grew. The doorbell rang. Rachel looked at the clock. 10 in the morning. The person who appeared at this set time was her mother-in-law, Caroline. "Good morning, Rachel." "Another beautiful day," Caroline said, carrying a basket with homemade muffins as usual. "Good morning." "Thank you so much, as always," Rachel greeted her politely. Caroline was kind on the surface, but Rachel sometimes felt a certain distance. "How's Michael doing? He seems busy lately, but he's eating nutritious meals, isn't he?" Caroline said as she headed to the kitchen. Her attention was always focused on her son, and Rachel often felt treated like an accessory. "Yes, I'm being careful about that. But he does seem tired recently," Rachel replied, following her mother-in-law into the kitchen. Caroline took plates from the cupboard with familiar ease and arranged the muffins. "He's been a hard worker since he was little. But I worry because he tends to overdo things." Rachel nodded with a smile. She understood her mother-in-law's love for her son, but sometimes felt pressured by it. Especially when the topic of children came up, subtle changes would appear in Caroline's expression. "Rachel, how many years has it been since you two got married?" Caroline asked casually. However, the intent behind the question was clear. 3 years, Rachel answered quietly. She had experienced this type of conversation many times before. "I see, time flies," Caroline said with a meaningful expression. "Michael would surely make a wonderful father. When he was young, he was always good at taking care of younger children." Rachel felt a sharp pain in her chest. Her mother-in-law's words carried an undertone that seemed to pressure her about having children. However, she maintained the facade of a pleasant conversation. "Yes, Michael is a kind person," Rachel replied calmly. In the afternoon, her father-in-law Robert also stopped by. He had a reserved personality and was always polite toward Rachel. "How are you doing, Rachel? Is work going well?" Robert asked kindly. "Thanks to you, I'm keeping busy," Rachel replied. Robert was one of the few family members who showed understanding for her work. In the evening, when Michael came home, the four of them had dinner together. Caroline was cheerful in front of her son and superficially kind to Rachel. However, Rachel could sense something else, a faint dissatisfaction and critical atmosphere lurking at the edges of her mother-in-law's gaze. "Michael, why don't we go out as a family this weekend?" Caroline suggested. "Lately, you two have been spending all your time alone, and we've had so little time together." Michael looked troubled between his wife and mother. "Mom, we're busy too. But I'll try to make time." Rachel understood the true meaning behind her mother-in-law's words. It wasn't simply a request for family time, but a way to confirm her bond with her son and to check Rachel's position as the daughter-in-law. That night, after the parents went home, Rachel and Michael were alone together. Rachel felt the urge to confide in her husband about the heavy feeling she had carried all day, but she couldn't find the words. Michael loved his mother, and it seemed difficult for him to understand the subtle discomfort Rachel felt. After getting into bed, Rachel stared at the ceiling and thought. How much more effort would she need to gain her mother-in-law's approval? And when they finally had a child, how would Caroline react? Around this time, Rachel began to notice changes in her body. She experienced mild nausea and dizziness, and felt more tired than usual. About a week after Rachel's health problems continued, she made up her mind to buy a pregnancy test. Alone in the bathroom, holding the test in her hands, her heart was beating rapidly. She felt a mixture of hope and anxiety about the possibility. A few minutes later, seeing the lines that appeared on the test, Rachel involuntarily covered her mouth with her hand. She was pregnant. The miracle they had waited 3 years for had finally happened. Michael, that evening, when her husband came home, Rachel called his name with a trembling voice. "I have something to tell you." Michael noticed that his wife seemed different than usual. "What's wrong? Are you feeling sick?" Rachel held out the pregnancy test. "We're having a baby." Michael's expression froze for a moment, then changed to a big smile. "Really? Is it true?" He embraced his wife, tears of joy in his eyes. "Thank you, Rachel. You're the best wife." The two held each other and talked about the new life that was about to begin. They had endless topics to discuss: the baby's name, preparing the room, future plans. The next day, Michael reported the pregnancy to his parents. Robert was genuinely happy, taking Rachel's hand and offering words of blessing. "You two will make wonderful parents. I'm truly happy." However, Caroline's reaction was subtle. She smiled on the surface and said, "Congratulations," but there was a complex light in her eyes. "I see, that's good," she said, but her voice had an artificial quality. "Mom, you could be a little happier." Michael was slightly confused by his mother's reaction. "Of course I'm happy. It's just that since this is her first pregnancy, I'm worried," Caroline made an excuse. "Rachel has such a slender build, I wonder if she can properly nurture the baby." Rachel was shocked by her mother-in-law's words. It was a comment that dampened their joy. However, she couldn't say anything in front of Michael. After that, Caroline's behavior changed dramatically. She began visiting their house almost daily, bringing homemade meals for the baby in your belly. Nutrition is crucial in early pregnancy. "I'll use my knowledge from when I was a nurse to help manage Rachel's health," Caroline explained to her son. Rachel was grateful for her mother-in-law's consideration. Indeed, the nutritious meals were helpful for her, as she had lost her appetite due to morning sickness. The vegetable soup Caroline made and the specially blended herbal tea were delicious, and her condition seemed to be stabilizing. "Thank you so much, Mother. This is really helpful," Rachel said with heartfelt gratitude. "It's only natural. This is my precious grandchild." Caroline smiled, but there was something unnatural about that smile. Around the 6th week of pregnancy, Rachel's morning sickness began to gradually worsen. She woke up with severe nausea and found it difficult to eat. "This isn't normal," Caroline said with concern. "I'll make you a special nutritional drink, so drink it every day." The nutritional drink was made with ingredients Caroline had carefully selected. "It's packed with iron and vitamins that pregnant women need," she explained. The drink was slightly bitter, but Rachel didn't want to waste her mother-in-law's kindness, so she drank it faithfully every day. However, after she started drinking the nutritional drink, Rachel's condition worsened further. The nausea continued all day, and she began experiencing frequent headaches and dizziness. She continued to lose weight, and her complexion became pale. "Are you okay? You've gotten so thin," Michael worried. "Maybe we should have you examined by an obstetrician." "But morning sickness is a normal symptom of pregnancy, isn't it?" Rachel replied weakly. "No, this is abnormal," Caroline declared. "When I was a nurse, I never saw such severe morning sickness. You must need some kind of special care." Caroline became even more devoted to caring for her. She brought special supplements at set times morning, noon, and night, making Rachel take them for the baby's health. These are special supplements for pregnant women. I got them from a pharmacist friend, Caroline explained. They're different from over-the-counter ones, they're more effective. Rachel was moved by her mother-in-law's devoted care. She was deeply grateful that someone who wasn't even her biological mother would show such concern. However, her condition didn't improve at all. One morning in the 8th week of pregnancy, Rachel woke up with severe abdominal pain. She rushed to the bathroom and vomited repeatedly. There was blood mixed in the vomit, and she felt terrified. "Michael, help me," Rachel called to her husband. Her voice was hoarse, and she could barely stand. Michael turned pale seeing his wife's condition. "We need to get to the hospital right away." "I'll come with you," Caroline offered. "I know more about pregnancy." During the ambulance ride to the hospital, Rachel's consciousness was hazy. Caroline held her hand, repeatedly saying, "It'll be okay, it'll surely be okay." However, her eyes showed a mixture of anxiety and some other emotion. Upon arrival at the hospital, Rachel was immediately taken to the emergency room. The doctors performed blood tests and ultrasounds, trying to determine the cause. "We can confirm the fetal heartbeat," the doctor reported. "However, the mother's condition is very poor." "Have you taken any special drugs?" "No, no special medications," Rachel replied weakly. "I only drank the nutritional drink my mother-in-law made and took the supplements she gave me." The doctor frowned. "Could you tell me more about that nutritional drink and those supplements?" Caroline couldn't hide her agitation at the doctor's question. "Those are things I specially prepared for pregnant women. They're all made from natural ingredients." "Do you have a list of ingredients?" the doctor asked. "That's at home," Caroline answered vaguely. The doctor looked serious. "Let's wait for Rachel's blood test results. We might discover something abnormal." While waiting in the waiting room, Michael was confused by his wife's sudden deterioration. "Mom, are you sure that drink is safe?" "Of course it is. I wouldn't make anything harmful," Caroline said, but her voice lacked conviction. Rachel lay in the hospital bed, reflecting on the past few weeks. She had been grateful for her mother-in-law's devoted care, but at the same time, she had felt something was off. There was a strange tension in Caroline's expressions and behavior. "Maybe we should contact David," Michael said. Rachel's brother David was an obstetrician who worked at this hospital. It would be reassuring to hear from a specialist. Rachel nodded. To determine the cause of this abnormal deterioration, they needed a diagnosis from a trusted doctor. The next morning, David visited the hospital room. Seeing Rachel's complexion, he immediately looked serious. "Rachel, last night must have been terrible." David sat beside the bed. "I heard from the attending physician. Your symptoms are beyond the normal range of morning sickness." "Are the baby and I okay?" Rachel asked anxiously. Even after the night had passed, her condition hadn't improved, and the nausea and headaches continued. "The fetal heartbeat is stable. But I'm concerned about your blood test results." David chose his words carefully. "I'd like to run some additional tests." Michael and Caroline were watching anxiously from the corner of the room. Caroline had been restless since last night, frequently checking the time and clenching her hands. "Dr. David, is Rachel really going to be okay?" Caroline addressed the doctor. "I have nursing experience, so I thought I was familiar with caring for pregnant women." David looked at his mother-in-law. "Caroline, according to yesterday's doctor, Rachel was taking some kind of special nutritional drink and supplements." "Yes, I made them with natural ingredients that are said to be good for pregnant women," Caroline replied. However, there was a slight tremor in her voice. "Could you tell me more about those ingredients?" "If you have a list, I'd like to see it," David said in the stern tone of a medical professional. Caroline looked confused. "That's at home." From memory, I'd say iron, B vitamins, folic acid, and several types of herbs. What kind of herbs? David asked for details. Raspberry leaf, ginger, and... Caroline hesitated. I don't remember exactly. David frowned. To be so vague about something given to a pregnant woman was unnatural. In the afternoon, Rachel's blood test results came back. David was consulting with colleague doctors, holding the test results. His expression gradually became more serious, occasionally showing disbelief. Are you sure this is correct? David confirmed with the lab technician. Yes, we checked 3 times. There's no mistake. David headed to the hospital room with the test results. Walking down the corridor, his heart was in turmoil. What these results meant was terrifying. Entering the room, Rachel was trying to sit up a little. Michael was supporting her, and Caroline was standing by the window, staring outside. How were the test results? Rachel asked hopefully. David gripped the test results, remaining silent for a while. His face was pale, and his hands were trembling slightly. Rachel, abnormal substances were detected in your blood, David said in a low voice. Abnormal substances. Michael stood up in surprise. What are they? David took a deep breath. Very dangerous chemical substances that pregnant women should not ingest. Specifically, a mixture of heavy metal compounds and alkaloids that could seriously affect fetal development. The room fell silent. The color drained from Rachel's face, and Michael looked incredulous. What does that mean? Rachel asked with a trembling voice. I haven't ingested anything dangerous. David looked at Rachel. I'm sorry, but the fact that these substances were detected means they entered your body somehow. And at the current concentration. At the current concentration. Michael waited breathlessly. Both you and the fetus are in danger if this continues, David continued gravely. We need to perform an abortion immediately. Right now. Rachel's eyes widened. Why? This is the baby we finally conceived. David looked at the test results with a trembling voice. If this continues, both you and the fetus, your lives are at risk. The toxin concentration has reached a lethal level. Toxins. Michael was stunned. How could there be toxins? Caroline stood rigid by the window. Her face was ashen, and her hands were shaking. Please wait, Rachel said desperately. I've only been eating normal food. I only drank the nutritional drink my mother-in-law made and took the supplements she gave me. David suddenly turned toward Caroline. Caroline, about that nutritional drink and those supplements, please tell me in detail once more. Where did you obtain the ingredients? Caroline had trouble answering. I got them from a trusted herb shop. Please tell me the name of the herb shop, David pressed with a stern tone. I don't remember, Caroline averted her gaze. David looked at the test results again. These toxins are not the type that can be obtained from ordinary herb shops. Without knowledge of medical pharmaceuticals or special chemicals, accidental contamination would be impossible. Michael stared at his mother. Mom, what did you mix in? I had good intentions. Caroline's voice was hoarse. Good intentions. David stood up. This goes beyond good intentions. These toxins were intentionally mixed in. They cannot occur naturally. Rachel looked at her mother-in-law with disbelief. You couldn't have. Caroline suddenly broke down crying. I just wanted to protect my son. That woman isn't suitable for my son. Shock ran through the room. Michael couldn't understand his mother's words. Mom, what are you saying? Michael asked with a trembling voice. Michael, there should be better women for you. Women from good families, more respectable women, Caroline said through tears. I can't entrust my son to Rachel. David quickly left the room and instructed a nurse. Please call security immediately. And contact the police too. Rachel was speechless with shock. She couldn't accept the fact that for 3 years, while trying to gain her mother-in-law's approval, she had actually been poisoned. Mother, I worked so hard to gain your approval, Rachel said through tears. Why would you do this? Caroline covered her face. I might have been wrong. But I just wanted my son to be happy. Happy. Michael was trembling with anger. You were trying to kill my wife and child. David returned to the room. Caroline, you will be questioned by the police. Rachel, we'll prioritize your treatment. Will my baby be saved? Rachel asked desperately. David took Rachel's hand. If we perform toxin elimination treatment, there's a possibility. But time is crucial. The room door opened, and police officers entered. Caroline stood up as if resigned. Rachel, forgive me, Caroline said finally. I was wrong. Rachel watched through tears as her mother-in-law was taken away. The reality that her beloved husband's mother had tried to harm her and their baby was too cruel. Michael sat beside his wife's bed and squeezed her hand. Rachel, I failed to protect you. Please forgive me. You're not at fault, Rachel looked at her husband. No one could have predicted this. David began preparing for treatment. I'm going to start the toxin elimination treatment now. Rachel, I'll definitely save both you and the baby. Rachel stared at the ceiling, reflecting on recent events. Her mother-in-law's love had been based on distorted jealousy and hatred. However, the fact that her husband and brother were trying to protect her was her only comfort. Before heading to the treatment room, Rachel whispered softly, Baby in my belly, Mommy will protect you. 2 days later, David held the detailed toxin analysis results. His expression was serious, having just finished consulting with a colleague who specialized in toxicology. Unbelievable, David muttered, looking at the test report. The toxins detected in Rachel's blood were not simply misused herbs, but clearly intentionally prepared compounds. In the hospital room, Rachel was receiving detoxification treatment. Agents to neutralize the toxins in her body were being administered through 4, and the fetal condition was being carefully monitored. Michael hadn't left his wife's bedside, suffering from guilt and anger. Rachel, how are you feeling? David entered the room. I feel like I'm getting a little better, Rachel replied weakly. Is the baby okay? The fetal heartbeat is stable. If we can remove the toxins from your body, there's a high possibility you can continue with a normal pregnancy. David showed a relieved expression. Michael turned to David. Could you tell me more about the toxins my mother used? David sat down and opened the report. The toxins Caroline used were a mixture of tanacetin, a plant alkaloid, and lead compounds. Tanacetin causes miscarriage when ingested in large amounts, and lead compounds cause serious damage to the fetal nervous system. Where did my mother get such dangerous substances? Michael asked with a trembling voice. According to the police investigation, Caroline apparently obtained them illegally from a former colleague who was a pharmacist. She falsely claimed it was for research purposes, David continued. Moreover, she had even researched the appropriate dosage to give to pregnant women. Rachel was shocked. So mother was trying to kill me? No, I don't think she intended to kill you, David answered carefully. Judging from the dosage, it seems the purpose was to cause a miscarriage and have a long-term impact on your health. In other words, she was trying to make it so you could never get pregnant again. Michael clenched his fists. How horrible. Mother was completely insane. At that moment, there was a knock on the room door. A police detective entered. Mrs. Smith, how are you feeling? The detective asked politely. I have some questions about the interrogation of suspect Caroline Smith. Rachel sat up. Yes, I'll answer as best I can. From approximately when did the suspect start providing you with special food and drinks? Right after we found out about the pregnancy. At first it was a few times a week, but after morning sickness started, it became almost daily, Rachel answered. During that time, did you notice anything unusual about the suspect's behavior? Rachel searched her memory. At first, I thought she was really being kind to me. But looking back, whenever I felt sick, she seemed to show a relieved expression. Michael stood up. Detective, has my mother admitted to the crime? She denied it at first, but when confronted with evidence, she confessed, the detective replied. Regarding motive, she stated that she was a woman unworthy of my son. Unworthy? Rachel laughed sadly. I desperately tried to gain her approval for 3 years. The next day, Robert visited the hospital room. His father-in-law's face was completely haggard, and he seemed to have aged overnight. Rachel, I'm truly sorry, Robert bowed deeply. I sincerely apologize for my wife's actions. Father, you did nothing wrong, Rachel replied kindly. No, I should have noticed, Robert cried. I should have realized that Caroline had been acting suspiciously lately. After learning about your pregnancy, she was clearly acting strange. In what way? Michael asked. She was reading herb books in the middle of the night, talking on the phone with strangers, Robert continued. When I asked, she said she was studying for Rachel's sake. I never imagined she was planning something like this. David entered the room. Rachel, good news. Your blood test results have improved significantly. The toxins have been almost completely eliminated. Really? Rachel's face lit up with hope. Yes, and the baby is growing normally too. At this rate, you should be able to continue with a normal pregnancy, David smiled. That night, Rachel and Michael were alone together. In the quiet of the hospital room, they talked about the recent events. Michael, I don't hate your mother, Rachel took her husband's hand. Why? You could have died, Michael was surprised. Continuing to hold hatred won't solve anything, Rachel replied. Besides, your mother might have been sick too. Her love for her son became twisted. Michael cried. You're a strong person. I'm so glad I chose you. We'll continue walking together, Rachel smiled. Together with our baby. A week later, Caroline's formal trial began. In court, she gave her final testimony. I loved my son. But that love went in the wrong direction, Caroline said through tears. Rachel is a good person. Out of jealousy and my desire to monopolize my son, I did something unforgivable. Did the defendant understand that her actions constituted attempted murder? The prosecutor asked. Yes, I understood. But I couldn't stop myself, Caroline hung her head. I was afraid of losing my son. The sentence was severe. Caroline received a 4-year prison sentence for attempted murder by poison contamination. After the verdict, Rachel had a final conversation with Caroline in the courtroom. Mother, I forgive you, Rachel said quietly. But what you did is unforgivable. Caroline broke down crying. Rachel, I was wrong. You were a good daughter-in-law. I was blind. I wanted you to be happy too, Rachel cried. But now, protecting my baby and husband is my top priority. Caroline turned back before being taken away. Please, be happy. Rachel nodded. With sadness and sympathy rather than hatred, she watched her mother-in-law's final departure. Returning to the hospital, David was waiting. Rachel, I was moved by your strength. To forgive her in that situation. Forgiving and forgetting are different things, Rachel replied. I won't forget. But I don't want to be controlled by hatred. Michael embraced his wife. From now on, let's build a family that's just ours. Rachel smiled. Yes, a family filled with love. The baby in her belly moved. The new life was growing healthily, surrounded by his parents' love. Later, Rachel gave birth to a healthy baby boy. In the hospital's newborn nursery, holding the small life, she was filled with deep emotion. He's beautiful, just like you, Michael said, looking at his wife and son. What should we name him? How about David? Rachel smiled. Since he saved us. That's a wonderful name, Michael agreed. Uncle David held his nephew and cried. This child will be strong. He'll grow up with your love. Robert was genuinely happy about his grandson's birth too. After his wife's crime was discovered, he had been tormented by deep self-blame, but the birth of this new life gave him hope. Rachel, I'm grateful that you forgave my son, Robert said. I divorced my wife, but I'd like to continue our relationship. Father, you're part of our family, Rachel replied warmly. Please continue to be with us. Caroline was serving her sentence in prison. When Michael came to visit, she showed him her emaciated figure. Son, the grandchild was born healthy, wasn't he? Caroline cried. I was the worst mother. Mom, what you did is unforgivable, Michael said sternly. But you're my mother, so I don't intend to abandon you completely. Thank you, Michael, Caroline bowed her head. Please give my regards to Rachel and the baby. I'll spend my life making amends. Michael stood up. Someday, when you truly repent, I'll listen to what you have to say. Caroline watched her son's retreating figure, feeling anew the weight of the crime she had committed. 2 years later, Rachel and Michael purchased a new house. It was a single-family home with a yard, with plenty of space for little David to run around. Daddy, flowers. 2-year-old David pointed to the roses blooming in the garden. That's right, beautiful flowers, Michael picked up his son. Mommy planted them for us. While gardening, Rachel savored the peaceful daily life of her family. She had recovered from that terrible experience and now felt genuine happiness. Rachel, you really are a strong person, Michael said to his wife. In that situation, you chose love instead of hatred. I didn't choose to love, Rachel smiled. Love comes naturally. I chose to let go of hatred. At dinner time, the three of them sat around the table. David was trying hard to use his spoon to eat, and his parents watched him with warm eyes. Let's build a home filled with love for this child, Michael said. Yes, we've learned that there are things more important than blood relations, Rachel replied. That night, Rachel sang a lullaby while putting David to bed. Looking at her son's sleeping face, she made a vow in her heart, to raise this child in an environment filled with love and understanding. Good night, David, Rachel kissed his forehead. In the living room, Michael was organizing family photos. There were photos with Caroline in them, but he didn't throw them away, he kept them in the album. We can't completely erase the past, but we create our own future, Michael said as if talking to himself. Rachel sat next to her husband. That's right, let's build a warm family with our own hands. Outside the window, the gentle spring night breeze was blowing. In the small garden, the flowers Rachel had planted were quietly blooming. 3 years later, Caroline was released early for good behavior. However, she didn't try to contact her son and daughter-in-law. Understanding the gravity of what she had done, she decided she shouldn't disturb their peaceful life. Robert occasionally watched his ex-wife from afar. Caroline had started living alone in a small apartment and was participating in community volunteer activities. She seems to have changed, Robert reported to Rachel. But she doesn't seem ready to approach you yet. That's fine, Rachel replied. Someday, there might come a day when we can truly reconcile. 5-year-old David sometimes heard stories about his grandmother. "Mommy, don't I have a grandma?" "You do, David," Rachel replied gently. "But she's far away right now. Maybe you'll meet her someday." "I want to meet her," David said innocently. Rachel hugged her son. "When that time comes, you'll surely be able to meet her." At night, when she was alone with Michael, Rachel said, "We've really become a true family. Even without blood ties, our hearts are connected," Michael replied. "I'll never forget the true meaning of love that you taught me." Rachel smiled. Having overcome hardship, she had found true happiness. She had learned firsthand that family is not about blood relations, but about hearts bound together by caring for one another.